the opposite on the agency side is now experiential pitching, right? So agencies now, my view, should be spending time bringing the drama to the pitch, right? Because you've got time. You must bring the drama. I also think in how you pitch and how you show up, we're slowly getting to this understanding that less is more. Life's a pitch and then you die. Life's a pitch and then you die. Wow.
Hi there. Welcome to the CMO Corner. My name is Tawani Kumalo and I'm your host. For the month of June, we're doing something special. We've seen the challenges that marketing is facing. We know the high unemployment rate for the youth, and we're doing something special. And I want to introduce to you the Brave Future CMO Code. I'm going to be joined by Mr. Musa Kalenga, who is the Group Chief Executive Officer for Brave Group and the founder of Forge. And we're going to be talking about what the future of marketing looks like, how we lead that and not only adapt, and how we make sure that we empower the current youth and the future CMOs. So join us over the next 4 weeks as we give you breathtaking content that will challenge marketing today. So episode 3, brother.
Yeah, we're doing this thing.
We've done a lot over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to make sure that we are clear on a couple of things we've discussed, right? In the beginning, we spoke about the future of a CMO and what those brave future CMOs should actually look like in the future.
Absolutely.
We've spoken about the briefing process, which was very exciting. And in the process of briefing, there's a strategy piece, and then eventually, to some degree, we get to pitching.
Correct.
I want to talk to you possibly about the merger of these two things because one, we've spoken about briefing, Forge caters to that. As we talk about strategy, Forge caters to that. Now integrating AI into pitching.
Yeah.
Let's talk again around possibly what you've seen in this current form, traditional form around the dynamics of a great pitch.
Yeah.
What's the makeup of that? And then I want us to then get into the possible solves that AI could have going into the future.
Yeah. It's a lot, eh? Life's a pitch and then you die. Life's a pitch and then you die. Wow. Yeah. No,
What is wrong with you?
we must have fun, right? Yeah. So look, the anatomy of a pitch. So there's a lot that goes into it, eh? And actually, probably the most astute marketers and people in agency will tell you that the pitch starts long before you get a brief to show up on a particular day.
Yeah.
The best agencies try and be very specific around the kind of work they go for. So one could argue that the pitch starts by how you prospect to be invited to pitch for stuff.
Okay, let's start there.
If you find yourself in a situation where you've got particular strengths in a specific sector, the pitch begins by you putting yourself out there to that audience. Okay. Because that is not necessarily you going to present, but it's them being able to look within the ecosystem of potential suitors and seeing that you are one that they can speak to, right? Okay. So I think that's an important start, which speaks to how you position yourself in market, which speaks to building your brand so that when you're not there, it speaks on your behalf, et cetera, et cetera. But certainly when you're invited to the occasion and there's been an opportunity presented for an agency to pitch, there are specific things that can help increase your success probability. We found that in the pitching process, clarifying upfront the requirements from the potential client and comparing that to the ethos and capabilities of the agency is really important. Is this the kind of client and type of client that the agency can work with? And why that becomes really important is that these things tend to be 3 to 5 year relationships. And there's nothing worse than working in a dynamic where you just don't vibe, right? Yeah. And that's the worst thing to do, because that's how you create a lot of toxicity with teams and the dynamics. So
like dating someone you don't like for 5 years.
Exactly, and you didn't ask the right questions at the date.
True.
So
that's bad.
Yeah, you didn't say.
I can see it. Oh my god! Oh no!
You should ask them whether they take ashwagandha before they sleep. Those are important things to know. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, true.
So that process of just vetting at a very surface level. What kind of agencies have they worked for in the past? What's their leadership structure like? What is the CMO's inclination towards big ideas? What is the kind of sentiment towards great local work versus global work? So those are all very nuanced questions that are important to ask in assessing whether a pitch is for you to start. And then assuming tick tick tick, you'll probably receive some kind of documentation that alludes to being invited to pitch. Depending on the process, there might be an opportunity to have a chemistry session. The chemistry session establishes whether there's a vibe. And what we do as standard practice is we do an AI sprint. So as soon as we establish that we can work with this client or this brand, a standard practice, we run an AI sprint, which is about orientation. So our team will sit in a room and we'll take an hour or two. We use our double diamond process. So we've got an AI sprint design thinking process. And we'll just kind of immerse ourselves in this brand, right?
Okay.
Why that's important to do before you get the pitch is, that's probably the most pure sense of curiosity, because you're just trying to understand.
Yeah.
The problem with the pitch is that it points you at a problem to solve.
Yes.
Whereas when you do this AI sprint that is, not based on a problem to solve, you're actually just exploring. You're allowing your mind to think about stuff. You're allowing your brain to go places. And we find that also creates very fertile ground in terms of understanding the brand, getting to know the personality, those kind of things. What it also helps us to do is that, you can clarify some things when you do get the pitch, very quickly. You can start to understand, did we fully understand what they're trying to do? Did we fully get the brand purpose?
So this work is done pre-getting the pitch document.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
So we know now we're interested in pitching for a brand Tabani.
Yes.
Let's go find out what brand Tabani is all about. Let's go do a deep dive on that. Then brand Tabani says, okay, guys, here's the document. Here's the pitch that we want you to do. By receiving that pitch, we analyze a couple of things. Firstly, who's going to be in the room? And that's where AI starts to become really interesting, because there's lots of great technologies now that can help you build a profile of the people that you're going to be pitching to. So I know that brand Tabani's got a marketing director, it's got a junior brand manager, head of procurement, and I know that these 4 characters are going to be in the room. How do we get to know them before we're actually in the room with them? AI is great for that, right? Online strategic stalking, as they call it. But
I do that a lot.
Exactly, right? So, but creating a profile, right? You can start to understand the high notes. What is Tabani all about? Oh, as we see, it talks about sustainability a lot. So maybe that's a thing for him. We've got a procurement guy in the room who's likely not going to ask technical questions, but we make sure we have to hit the notes that are to do with compliance, right? So you do a bit of strategic stalking using great AI tools online, and then you interrogate the structure of the brief. So we've built some really great prompts that help us to ingest the brief and assess it and be able to structure it in a way that we've got what we call a game plan. The game plan gives you timelines, gives you specific points that you need to hit on a project plan, and really just breaks down what's required in terms of the final presentation. And then the third thing is that we've got a prompt that helps us to understand what the skeleton structure of the output pitch should be. So then you've got a true north and you work back from that. And then you start building out the pitch itself. You've got some context from your AI sprint. You understand who's going to be in the room. We generally do an AI sprint after that, which is strategy focused. Which is call it an hour and a half. Everyone is in the room. We attack the strategy. We get to a point where we've got the strategic platform. And after we've got the strategic platform, we test it with the creative teams, and the creative teams have got sometimes an opportunity to go and test 3 or 4. If there's one that we believe in, we're like, this is the one we're going for, depending on the kahunas in the room, as they say. You're like, this is the strategic platform, and then the creatives go down the rabbit hole. And what we do now is, they come up with a big idea, and then we use the AI tools to be able to start visualizing, to be able to add the texture, to be able to create animations, to be able to, what does the sound like, and all that kind of stuff, which are the elements that then go into the final pitch. And then typically after that sprint, we bring everything together and then we run rehearsals. Now, what we're getting good at doing now is also testing the output, which is great, right? We use data to say, if this is the strategic platform and this is the big idea, we've developed some really clever ways of being able to test how we feel that's going to land in the market by being clear on the segment that you're speaking to and using AI to give you some kind of quality score and rating, right? So if we're speaking to young men in Johannesburg under the age of 35 and this is the strategic message, do you think it's going to land? And then it gives you a scoring framework, and that helps us to be more data driven. So those are the tools that we use.
So now let's go back a couple of steps. You mentioned the first sprint. Who sits in that first sprint, and what is the key thing that you're trying to get from that?
So in that sprint, it's important to have the strategy lead. It's important to have the creative lead. It's important to have the business lead. So typically it's orchestrated by the head of strategy. And it's the desire is actually, and this is why I'm glad you've honed in on it. The desire is actually just exploration. Remember that we spoke about curiosity.
Yes.
The desire is not saying at the end of the session we've got a thing.
Yes.
The desire is at the end of the session we might even have more questions. We've got a point of view. You've got a point of view, but it's different from mine. Oh, let's talk about that. So it's a pure exploration conversation. And that's also what's uncomfortable about it for many people, because they're looking for an outcome.
Yes.
And that first AI sprint, there's no outcome. The outcome is just getting deep.
Yeah.
And when you get deep, you plow the field for you to be able to take on the brief and have an understanding. And so what we tend to do, which is where I found that there was a lot of pressure in the system, is that you don't do that exercise and you wait till you get the brief. Now your brain is doing two cognitive exercises. Your brain now is understanding like this brief, its personality, like the brand, what are they, and you're solving for the problem same time. So those are two very difficult loops to jump through. So we've separated those and we've said, let's do one as an exploration exercise. Because if your brain can make sense of the brand, when you get the brief, it's almost like, okay, this is what we should do type thing. So that's why we separated them in the process.
And what should be the frame of mind going into that leveraging AI? Because you speak a lot about your sprints are AI driven, if you want to call it that.
Yes.
What's the frame of mind that I should be going into this process with? Am I trying to find all the answers from AI? Am I trying to find the gaps that exist and then for us to then sit after and almost solve for the gaps that possibly AI didn't answer? What's the frame of mind?
So the way I invite people to the session is I ask them to come in with a lesson that they want to teach everyone in the room.
Got you.
So the best way to prepare for these explorations is to have already thought about it before. And when you come into the room, you try and teach us something. Now, when you're teaching me something, without it even being part of what I'm thinking about, I can respond and say, that's interesting, but I don't think about it that way. I think about it this way.
Got you.
And we can go down a little bit of a rabbit hole based on what you're trying to teach us. Then we kind of shift to the next person. They try and teach us something. And we go, no, not really. What about this? What about, it complements that thing. So the first provocation is come into the room to teach everybody something.
Got you.
The second thing is how we use AI is in the room. Often there's debates, there's disagreements, there's no man. That thing didn't happen in the 1960s. It happened in the 1970s. Oh, let's just have a quick look. Grok, when did this thing happen? And give us a chronology and timeline. Grok gives you that very quickly. And they're like, it's actually the 70s. What else was happening in the 70s? Hey, chat, what major events happened in the 70s? And then you kind of go down a rabbit hole and you form a picture. So ordinarily, you'd need to do a lot of deep research. You need to go and do that stuff and get your head around it. But AI can get you down a quick rabbit hole and go, okay, cool, that's interesting. Let's come back to the main thing. Continue to teach us. We disagree, we debate, we discuss. And at the end of it, we actually don't have any alignment, but we've got understanding. And that's the key part about the AI sprint.
Jeez, okay. Now, with that, obviously, the AI is helping us, but then we've got the people that are prompting it.
Correct.
Which is what you call the magic dust, I believe.
No, so the magic dust is a little bit different.
Okay.
So the theory is, Musa and Tabani could sit in front of ChatGPT, Claude, whatever it is right now. You could enter a prompt, I could enter a prompt. We're solving for the same problem. The prompt itself, depending on how much you know about AI and the problem you're solving, how much I know about AI and the prompts, the prompts could be vastly different. Therefore, we could get vastly different outputs.
Okay.
Now, on the basis that we spoke about lifting the floor, despite the fact that they'll be vastly different, they'll also be equally competent to some extent. Now, the difference becomes when we get into a room and we have to sell that to our client. Now, that's where the magic dust comes in, is that the AI gives you your 0 to 1, but being able to sit in front of a marketing director and actually tell them that the thing you've been doing for the last 10 years is not working. Number one, here's the data that shows it. But the thing you should be doing is completely the opposite. That's a sales job. That's the magic dust. And then you build a narrative around the case that you're selling to this client. Now, that magic dust is very difficult to teach people. And it's also very difficult to code into AI because that's a human thing. Because you're using a lot of signals in being able to sell your thing. So a marketing director may be sitting there and looking at you and his eyes are squinted, right? And his eyes are squinted is typically a human signal that maybe I'm not buying your story. Or the eyes could be wide open. Then you could be like, oh, maybe I've told them something that they didn't know before. Or the body language is telling you something different. So the magic dust is taking all of those human signals and the place you've brought them to with the AI and still being able to get them over the line with the idea or the thing that you're selling.
Interesting. So in the process of selling, so AI has contributed because it's changed how we sell.
Correct.
But in essence, it shouldn't change what we are selling. So it feels like there's a merge of the two things, right? There's the how, and it's made it easier, quicker, simplified the process, etc., and possibly made it more richer.
Correct.
But what we are selling is a human thing.
Correct.
You know what I mean? So I'm trying to figure out the merge of these two worlds coming together in the process of pitching, right? So you're pitching and you've got the what or the how that has changed, and then the what that you're trying to sell. Should it change or should it not change?
I don't think it should change. At the end of the day, we're selling big, compelling ideas that move markets and that create value for big organizations. That's what we're selling. The way we go about selling it, to the point that you've made, is that we've got now technologies that bring us to a point a lot quicker. We've got technology that help us to package the potential outcome a lot better. We've got technology that help us to think broader than we've ever been able to think. Now, even all of that considered, the output is likely to be a pitch deck, which is simply a one-dimensional view of what your thinking has culminated in. With that pitch deck, you need the human to bring that to life for another human to consume in such a way that they go, that's the thing we want to do. So in some ways, it's actually doing a lot more of what we've already done, but you're just getting a far more rigorous experience, leveraging the tools, leveraging the data, leveraging all that stuff leading up to that point. And so I don't necessarily think they're completely separate things. I think they're very fundamentally integrated. But if you approach it with the view that now you can start to show up in a human way, it really just opens up our imagination. I'll take you back to the conversation we had, if you'll remember, where we talk about experiential briefing, right? The opposite on the agency side is now experiential pitching, right? So agencies now, my view, should be spending time bringing the drama to the pitch, right? Because you've got time. You must bring the drama. You get what I'm saying? So
I'm with you.
if you're going to get into a pitch and you're talking and you're trying to sell tires to a tire manufacturer, go do it at Kyalami racetrack, right? And set up a boardroom on the track and have cars spinning around you as you're trying to pitch. Bring the drama. You know, if you're trying to sell ice cream to some to a brand, go and put them in a cold room somewhere and talk about the ice cream and what it does. So bring the drama. So I think we now have the luxury to think that way. Whereas in the past it was just about do the research, get the work, do the presentation. It's the deck. Then the deck is there, and then it's talking heads. No. And obviously there's some guys who can bring the theater even when they pitch, but now the opportunity is to bring the drama. And I think that's a really unique opportunity which agencies can take hold of because of AI tools.
And you're mentioning something that I had a conversation with one of the CMOs, or was it an agency lead? And they spoke about there's an art and a science of pitching, exactly what we're talking about now, and how that on its own is a conversation that could go in one direction.
Correct.
I'm interested from your learnings. One, you've run an agency. This is your second stint. So clearly we love the stuff. I'm interested to understand for you what you think are some of the boxes. One, if I'm sitting at client side, I'm looking for in a pitch, like in a good pitch. If I'm sitting from an agency side, what I'm looking to do, yes, the drama you've mentioned now, in order to land the pitch.
So I think this is a really, really good question. So the juxtaposition for bring the drama is don't lose the clarity, right? Because drama can be distracting. If you use it as a gimmick, right? So there's drama that says, hey, look at this thing, hey, look at this thing, versus this is the thing I want you to look at. If you get what I'm saying.
I get you.
So you could think about the drama as a tactic, which becomes quite cheesy. Oh, let's all get matching T-shirts that say, hashtag we love this brand. You could do that, but which is just cheesy and lame. Or you could have a really considered way to land what you're talking about, and that's what I think they're looking for. They're looking for clarity. I think clients are wanting to know that all things said, they've told us about the strategy, they've given us who they are, but I think clients are looking for clarity. Clarity of thought, clarity in application of your thought into action, clarity of your understanding of their brand. And that clarity, the danger of bringing the drama is that you lose the clarity because it now just becomes about a gimmick. But I think the real human art is how do you use the drama to accentuate the clarity that you have in what you're trying to solve.
Gotcha.
Someone once told me about a Coca-Cola pitch. I don't know who this person was, but they were pitching, and I think it was for a campaign that was, I think the whole principle was about how Coca-Cola is refreshing.
Gotcha.
If I remember correctly.
Yeah.
And I might be paraphrasing it, but work with me. So in the pitch, they put all the executives in a boardroom and they turned off the aircon and they turned up the heat. And they pitched, and people were getting really uncomfortable and sweaty. And then right at the end, as they introduced the idea, they brought in ice cold Cokes, right? And they gave everyone, and the whole thing was about refreshment, right? So there's clarity there. But there's drama because now it's hot and it's like, why did you put on the heater? You get what I'm saying? And also not gimmicky, right? Clever, well considered and thought about. And it helps you with the idea you're trying to land, not just distracting you, for the purposes of distraction.
Got you. And what makes a winning pitch in your perspective?
Number one, answer the ask.
Yeah.
It is also a big trap to get so excited about an idea that you are throwing everything at it and you miss the ask, right? So, and I see it happen a lot. So the checkpoint at the end of all the excitement, that did we do what we set out to do? The older you get, I think there's an innate thing that asks the question, but I think I see often that people just get so enamored with the idea and they go here, there, and everywhere. And then at the end you're like, oh, that's really, really cool. But something makes you feel like the ask wasn't answered, right? So that's important. I also think in how you pitch and how you show up, we are slowly getting to this understanding that less is more, right?
Okay. What do you mean?
Less is absolutely more. So, and I think clients are so guilty of asking us to do like everything in 30 minutes. And what I've started to do lately is I've started to ask the teams to apply a ruthless discipline around what we talk about. We could talk about everything. We've done because now AI can give you 100,000 slides if you want. Now there's another problem. The problem is which of those 100,000 slides are you going to use in 30 minutes?
Yes,
right?
True.
So the ruthless discipline around what to say, and then the fact that you should be saying less than saying more, is another thing that makes up a winning pitch. And then lastly, I wouldn't underestimate the chemistry in the room, right? There's been scenarios where there's just been a vibe, and it's, I can't explain it. There's just been an energy and a chemistry that you create quite quickly in a room that gives a level of comfort not only to the agency team but the client team, and that is palpable. I've also been in the opposite. I've been in rooms where it's icy cold, like there's just no vibe, there's no chemistry, and it can be an early signal of really not a good energy in a relationship. And back to the dynamic of being humans, that does happen. There are some people you'll just meet and you're like, hey man, we just vibe, and then there's some people that you meet like, not so much. So the dynamics and the psychology of having a good chemistry and energy also makes up a good winning pitch.
And is there a way to cultivate the chemistry and the energy in the team?
There's an artificial way,
okay,
which we all have to do, which is the strategic CyberStalking.
Okay.
Because then you'll learn a little bit about Thabani. Then you'll know Thabani is a dog guy. Let's bring our dog guy to the pitch, and then they can sit down and talk about staffers. So that's an artificial way to do it, but you can do that. The better way to do it is, once you're in the room and you've done your strategic stalking, there's an awareness around where energy connects easily. So I don't know whether you've ever had this experience. You walk into a room and there's a group of 6-7 people, and there might be just one or two that you oscillate towards. You get what I'm saying? So it's not something you can teach someone, but if you're alive to that, and in the moment you feel that, you've got an upper hand. Now, for younger, agency members, that is not something I'd expect them to know or understand, and it's something that I'd expect the older agency members to be able to guide and advise on in the moment. But I'd certainly know that when I walk into a room and I'm greeting people, I know exactly where I could.
You get it at that point.
Exactly.
Yeah, you're right.
You get what I mean? So,
you feel it at that point.
But that's experience, right? That's nothing AI can teach you. That's the human thing. So if I'm not worried about getting through 1,000 slides, I can then hone into that and prepare for that in the moment. I can then hone into the drama that creates the clarity. I can then say less to be able to land more, and those things really, put together a really great pitch.
Got you.
Yeah.
And for the next generation of marketers coming up, and I'm having this conversation with you because we just finished with the TECC crew.
Yeah.
And they were technically pitching back to us.
Yeah.
what are you seeing as some of the gaps, not necessarily to them, but as an overall assessment of what is happening in the industry and how we could potentially solve for that, either at a human level or leveraging AI and any other platform that could potentially exist right now?
Yeah. So key learning for me with the tech crew, or rather a confirmation of what I thought, because I was also testing what the MIT research is saying.
Yeah.
Is that, did I feel like the floor was lifted? Absolutely. These are three young hopefuls, know nothing about an agency, never worked in an agency before. In 10 days, we've trained them on stuff. In 2 hours, 2.5 hours, they can pitch something back to us. Something. I'm not saying it's award-winning. It is something. Now, for me already, that says, we've lifted the floor. Now, what takes us higher is the human aspects of how they pitched it to us. Right? They read a lot of what they were talking about. They didn't have eye contact with us. The composition of their slides was clunky and full of information. And those things over time, you can kind of panel beat and get them right. For sure. But what you've established now is a baseline that proves that you can actually have a standard when it comes to the content that needs to be delivered. So the opportunity now is, how do you take these young people and then make them aware of all the other stuff, which one could argue is the harder stuff. The harder stuff is getting up in front of people and just being confident to look at a room full of people. How do you get someone comfortable with that? Some people just will never. They're getting anxious. They're like, no. But we can simulate that. Why? Because now we've got a bit of time. We've got a bit of time because the AI has gifted us the time. So what should be happening is we should be running these simulations weekly. We should be putting them in front of people every single week and say, just pitch to us the strategy piece, and you've got 10 minutes to do it. The more they do that, the more they get comfortable. And I'd say the same principle applies even from client side. I don't think, everyone talks about Unilever marketers. People who worked at Unilever.
They're the blueprint.
They rate themselves, right? And it's because I think at that time, and I think to some extent Unilever still has it, is they take fairly junior marketers and they gave them fairly big opportunities, right? So, when we went and we were doing some work there, I remember the brand was being presented by the junior brand manager, which was like
interesting, eh?
Yeah, it was like usually in a corporate context, it's a senior person. And I think it's the same principle. It's the more runtime you give young people on the platform, the more they can simulate the thing, and the more they'll be able to learn and be able to develop thick skin about. Presenting is an interesting thing in our worlds, right? Because I always fully acknowledge that some people will be naturally gifted and others not so much. But what the data shows us is the better you are at presenting, not only outside of marketing, not only in life, are you able to advance better, but you're able to communicate and land things that allow you to be able to get your point across. So that ability to present in the context of a domain like marketing is really, really useful. What we've proven now is that we can give you tools to allow you to have domain understanding. What we need to prove is when we add the skill and this talent that is intangible, we then turn you into a super resource. And I think the same principle applies on client side. What I don't see happening, unfortunately, is it's not that systemized, right? It's kind of left up to chance. And so those that have a natural affinity to self-development, those that have a natural affinity to doing better, tend to be the ones that will go and do it. And I think that's a failing of marketing. I think it's a failing of our system. We don't have what they used to call like almost an apprenticeship structure that creates a simulation that generates confidence in young people that allows them to take over confidently. We just don't have that, right? If you're lucky and you reach out to CMO X and you ask him to mentor you, maybe you'll get it right. But it's not baked in to the fact that I'm in this organization and now I want to develop and I want to grow, right? So I think it's a failing and I think it's an opportunity. And with the tech crew, we are certainly trying to figure out if we can, as an agency, in our own way, solve for that and hopefully try and get them to be functional, work ready, and contributing resources in our agency.
Lovely. I think what we've done is set a standard. If I think about it, of one, exposure, and how exposure can actually create better marketers, at least at this level, which is phenomenal. And I hope what you also have comfort in seeing is the fact that what you've started here is something that could change, one, your agency, and possibly other agencies in the future.
Oh man, that would be wonderful.
Whatever it looks like. Now, last part is, I believe Forge doesn't have a pitching AI element to it.
No, it doesn't yet. It's an interesting thought.
Yeah. Would you consider
That's interesting. So it would be based on the users saying that was an important requirement.
Got you.
Because we now have a product in market, what is really, really critical is that we're listening to the user's feedback.
Yeah.
And so if it does come up as a requirement, then absolutely yes. Part of us innovating alongside the users is, yes, us coming up with interesting ideas, but because now we have something live, we have to test those ideas to make sure they work.
Got you.
The curse of technology is we tend to go and build things that people never use, right? And so,
true.
And so in the beginning, you're testing a completely untested assumption, and now we've got some data that says it's working. So any other innovations will be driven by the data coming from people using the platform. And if that does come up as a requirement, then absolutely.
Okay,
Absolutely.
interesting.
Yeah.
And I look forward to seeing what comes up.
Yeah.
What is some of the feedback that you're currently receiving from the platform and what they are actually currently using?
So it's been really, really interesting. So some people have like said it feels like we're cheating, because of the speed and the accuracy. And the biggest build is around how we're thinking about data from the corporate clients. So that feedback has been consistent and recurring. And it's also quite evident that they're very much in the early stages of understanding AI. So the kind of, if I compare the commentary across big financial services institutions, it's very similar. And it's all about data. It's all about their lack of appetite to take a risk on their data not being taken care of well.
Yeah.
And I keep finding myself in a conversation around, there's two philosophies. The first philosophy is absolutely keep it closed, only your data.
Yeah.
The upside is that you have absolute security. The downside is you have limited creativity, right? So if that's what your brand is happy to have, then that's also okay. And then the opposite is you make it a little bit more open, and you also have some obviously security around that. Where the upside there is that you have far more creativity, and then you have a little bit more risk. Not that it's a lot of risk. So those are the kind of debates we're having at corporate level. But certainly so far the feedback has been the interface is intuitive. The product design itself is pretty good, so we haven't had any major complaints around UX.
Yes.
Obviously, it's still in early development, so it's not to say that the platform's perfect. But so far, the feedback's been really good.
Lovely. Brother, thank you.
As always.
The art and science of pitching. Good episode. And we've got a last episode that we need to do on the Brave strategy, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct.
Super.